This podcast is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. Visit the Tech Podcast Network at www.techpodcast.com. If it's tech, it's here.
Welcome to CalCast, your Create International podcast.
Welcome to CalCast, episode 28. Welcome, CalCast listeners, to another episode of CalCast, the podcast about how God is using new media and technology for missions today. I'm Cal Curtis, your host, here to bring you the latest in gospel gadgets and technology for finishing the task of world evangelization.
This podcast is proudly listed at podcastpickle.com.
On this episode of your Gospel Gadget podcast, we're going to be taking a look at what others are doing with technology to present their message around the world. We're going to take a look at an interview that was done of a man who works for the Internal Security Department of the United States, specifically targeting Qaida and their media network. And he's an expert on their media network and what they're doing with it. And so I think we can learn a lot of really interesting things about what Qaida and other terrorist groups are using to reach out to young people today to get their message across. Of course, this program is not pushing that kind of a message. Our message is about love, is about Jesus, is about forgiveness. But it would be good to challenge us to see what the enemy, so to speak, of love and forgiveness and tolerance is doing in the world today using technology, just like what we've been talking about on this programming. And so if they're using it, we should be way ahead of them using it for good because they mean it for evil, as we will soon see. And here's the interview on how Qaida is using media and technology to spread their message around the world. One of our sponsors is GoDaddy.com, and GoDaddy.com has just recently told us that we could give you a special deal. If you click on the GoDaddy.com icon on our website and go to GoDaddy.com, anything that you purchase there, you can get a 10% discount if you put our promo code in there. Our promo code is CJC, and then the word SAVE, and the number 10. Again, that's CJC, SAVE, and the number 10. And then you'll get 10% discount off of anything that you order through GoDaddy.com. Visit GoDaddy.com today and get all of your internet needs taken care of.
Iraqi group called the Mujahideen Shura Council has released gruesome footage of two corpses it says are American soldiers killed last month. In the video, one body is decapitated. The group dedicated the video to an Iraqi girl who American soldiers are accused of raping and killing. Videos have been a key part of the communication strategy of terrorist groups, something we're going to take a closer look at this morning. It's part of our conversations on the inner workings of Osama bin Laden's Qaida. When bin Laden wants to speak to the world, he reaches out to Sahab. Sahab is the public relations arm and production company for Qaida. It's responsible for producing numerous videotapes, some featuring Osama bin Laden, and just last week, the London bombers. Evan Coleman monitors Sahab, and he joins us from New York. And just to begin, as the public relations arm of al-Qaeda, what is al-Sahab responsible for?
Well, since about the year 2000, Sahab has been responsible for putting out videotapes and video recordings from inside of central Afghanistan and southeastern Afghanistan, depicting propaganda, and it's also a little bit of documenting military operations.
Well, the part that's propaganda or to some quarters advertisement, it is pretty reasonably professional, right?
Oh, it's very professional. It's actually amazing. You're talking about very, very high-quality video subtitling. You're talking about English translations. Graphic sequences have been done showing rockets being fired into an American flag and having the American flag exploding into pieces. And, these are very high-quality videos. They're very dramatic. They get passed around like baseball cards. They're being distributed in formats that you can even watch on your cell phone. So it shows us that there are dedicated teams of individuals working on this and that they're spending quite a bit of time on this, that this is almost like their full-time profession.
How does al-Sahab stack up against other propaganda, if you will, machines of other terrorist organizations?
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point. There are competing media wings within al-Qaeda. Sahab is just al-Qaeda's media wing with regards to operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan and occasionally in Saudi Arabia. Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's apparatus in Iraq is extremely professional, and they have done some incredible stuff with their video. That being said, no one tops Sahab.
And one particular individual who's quite interesting, who does a lot of this work, is a young American by the name of Adam Gadon. Tell us about him.
Yeah, Adam Gadon is quite an interesting fellow. He started off in California. He grew up on a goat farm. He was the son of an old-time psychedelic rocker, and not exactly the background of most al-Qaeda operatives that I know. But Adam became affiliated with a group of radical and Muslim, I guess you'd call them operatives or activists. So in about 2000, this white kid from Southern California goes over to Pakistan, makes contact with senior al-Qaeda leaders, and becomes really a major influence within al-Qaeda, principally through his role at the Sahab Media Foundation, al-Qaeda's media wing. From the very first of al-Qaeda's recordings, the English translations, which have proven so important to al-Qaeda, number one, in communicating its message to the Western world, but number two, also in recruiting others like Adam Gadon. These subtitling, these translations were being done by Adam, and that's why they were so professional, they were so accurate, and they made these productions so good. It's also, it seems apparent from his latest appearance that he's also involved in perhaps some of the actual video production work.
Now, how does al-Sahab manage to do all this recording and fancy production, distribute it?
Well, Sahab has assistants, has supporters, has people that do some of its work for it. First of all, it should be stated that the actual recording of these interviews is done by cameramen who don't necessarily work for Sahab. And I say work because very few of these people are actually paid. This is all volunteer work. But the video will then be given over to Sahab, and Sahab will take that video and then re-edit it. From there, Sahab then hands that video off to individuals, first of all at Al Jazeera in order to preview it, but then second of all on the internet. And it's actually what Sahab has is it has almost what you'd like to call the PR newswire of terrorist propaganda. It's something called the Al-Fajr Media Center. And the Al-Fajr Media Center is a group of individuals on the internet who have taken it upon themselves to be responsible for distributing authentic terrorist propaganda. So it really is remarkable. I mean, it works almost the same way that you would expect Associated Press or Reuters to work in a Western context.
When you look at the different videotapes that al-Sahab has produced and distributed over the last few years, what do you learn about their media strategy, about their audience, and about how their strategy might have even changed?
Well, right after 9/11, al-Qaeda released its first videotape documenting its role in the 9/11 attacks, a will of a 9/11 hijacker. And then a year later, in order to prove that it really was involved in the planning and the recruitment of these individuals, Sahab released a second video of another 9/11 hijacker will. Now, once again, you see the exact same phenomenon coming up now with the London 7/7 bombings. Again, you have a video that's released just after the attacks with one will of one suicide bomber. And then a year later, after, God knows how many people have come out with statements saying that the London bombings were the work of a homegrown cell and it had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda and Al-Sahab come up with another recording of another suicide bomber in order to prove their involvement in this. So in some ways, these videos are meant to recruit, but it's also a calling card. Al-Sahab leaves these videos in order to prove that Al-Qaeda is not some mythical, shadowy organization that's been conceived by the U.S. government, but that it really exists and that it really plays a role in masterminding terrorist attacks even today.
Well, just one final thing. You follow these, you track these videos. What significance is it that Osama bin Laden has not been seen in this way since America's 2004 election?
Part of it is that he saves himself up for the big shots. He doesn't want to get people too used to seeing him. He wants his appearances to mean something. But there's also a security element in this. And again, this goes back to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi in Iraq. Zarqawi is someone who never, ever released a video of himself, ever, up until April of 2006. Why not? Well, by recording a video and by releasing it, you're divulging a lot of information about what you look like, about where you are, about who you're with. And in Zarqawi's case, at least if you believe the story being told by the U.S. military, it certainly sounds like him recording that video played a big part in the U.S. military being able to track him and eventually kill him only a month later, or 2 months later, excuse me. Bin Laden, the loss of bin Laden would be, have a serious symbolic impact on Al-Qaeda, and a symbolic impact that I don't think that they really want to take the chance of encountering.
Evan Coleman, thanks very much for talking with us.
My pleasure.
Evan Coleman speaking to us from New York. He consults with the Justice Department and Scotland Yard in terrorism cases. He has been carefully monitoring Al-Qaeda's public relations arm, Al-Sahab.
Well, that was a very eye-opening interview. I'm sure that you learned a lot from it in terms of what can be used and how effective different forms of media and new media, particularly in digital media, can be used. I want to bring one thing to your attention as our listeners to see how Al-Qaeda and other groups are using telephones and short little clips of video to get their message across. We recently had a friend of ours go to Iran, the country of Iran, and while he was there, he noticed numerous groups of young people standing together, looking at their telephones, laughing at funny little clips that they had pulled off the internet, and they were Bluetoothing these to each other's telephones and sharing it. And he began to realize how turned on and tuned in these young people are, even in Iran. And so this is the case we're seeing all over the world, in the Middle East, but also in Asia, in the United States. Young people are using their telephones as a new personal media device, you might call it, with little movie clips and their favorite music, all the information about their friends. Very soon there'll be social networking on it. Really very soon, and I'm talking about within the year, it's estimated that the majority of the world will have its own mobile phone, its own personal media device. And as propagators or preachers of the gospel over the internet and other means, we need to make our message and our resources, our presentations of the gospel message, available for easy download onto mobile phones around the world. And this is really kind of a new trend that I believe is going to be the wave of the future. And we in the body of Christ need to be trendsetters. We need to be the ones that are doing this right away. We don't want to wait for the enemy to take over and utilize this form of communication. He's going to try anyway, and he's already trying to do it with the internet and things. But God has given this to us as a tool to reach the world. And already over 3 billion people have a mobile phone, more than 50% of the world's population. So very, very soon, that's accelerating, very quickly every year. very, very soon, the majority of the people on earth are going to have this kind of a powerful personal media device, and we need to get the gospel on every one of them. This is Cal Curtis with Gospel Gadget Podcast, signing out.